Good morning. We're just going to give it a minute or so and then we'll get started. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Fabienne Bocke. I am a commercial executive here at Bytes, so a licensing specialist. And this morning, we're going to talk about the licensing for the Power Platform. And we'll also be sending an email later today or tomorrow with the recording of the sessions. So the Power Platform is a suite of products that works alongside and fits into your software and services. From getting more insights from your data with Power BI to creating low to no code applications with Power Apps, building automated business processes with Power Automate to engaging with your customers with Power Virtual Agents. And we'll have a look at all of these components today. So first, let's start with Power Apps. Power Apps is what's going to allow us to build applications using low to no code. And when we're licensing Power Apps, we need to understand a few things about the applications we're building. First, what does our application connect to? Are we using standard or premium connectors? And we'll have a look at what they mean in a second. Second question, where is our data stored? Are we storing our data in Dataverse, or are we looking at SharePoint list or Excel, for example? Now here you can see a screenshot of what the Dataverse environment looks like. And then finally, what type of application are we building? Are we building Canvas or model-driven apps? With a Canvas application, which is included in Office 365, we're using that to build simple applications using a drag and drop interface. If you want to build a more complex application using component-focused approach, then you look at using a model-driven apps, and that does require Power Apps licensing. And so as I did say earlier, standard and premium connectors, what are they? When you build an application, so you choose the data that you want to your app to connect to. So it's either data that's things usually from Office 365, like Excel, for example, or SharePoint Online. All of these are going to be standard connectors, or data outside of that. So it could be on-premises data, like SQL. It could be data within Azure, and all of these are premium connectors. Now, when you build the application, you'll be able to see whether your connector is premium or standard connector. As an example here, if you can see, the Amazon Redshift has a little diamond icon. That little diamond icon means it's a premium connector. There is also at the bottom of the screen a link that shows you a list of premium and standard connectors. So if we go back to our questions, if you are building an application that is using premium connectors and storing your data in Dataverse, and we are building model-driven apps, if you say yes to any of those three questions, then we're going to need to license Power Apps separately. And to license the application, we're not just going to be licensing the users who create it, but also the users who access the applications. And there are three ways to license Power Apps. First option, per user per app, which is also called per app, which allows the licensed user to access one application and one portal, and we'll talk more about the portal licensing in a second. That licensing we often see for users starting their Power Apps journey, because you can stack those licenses to access several applications. So if you only have one or two applications, it'll be cheaper to buy a per user per app license. Our other options when your users are starting to build more and more applications is the per user model. The per user plan allows your licensed users to access unlimited applications. So as you build more and more applications, it will become a cheaper way to do that. And then finally, Microsoft recently released a pay-as-you-go model for Power Apps. That is built via Azure and it allows you to license the users only as they access your applications. So that is licensed on a per active user per month basis. So you only get charged as and when your users actually access that application. It's a great way to start because it's a great way to understand how much the applications are being used and then look at the best model to use in the future. Now, going back to my questions, if we have data that is only standard connectors, so things that link to 365 services, for example, we're only storing our data via SharePoint files or Excel sheets, and we're only using Canvas apps, then that's included in Office 365. So instead of having to license your users with Power Apps, your users licensed with 365 will be able to access those types of applications. And the only suite that does not include rights to Power Apps is Microsoft 365 F1. Everything else does give you access. And we also have Power Apps rights, also known as seeded rights, as part of Dynamics 365. So no additional Power Apps license is required as long as the application is used within the same environment as Dynamics 365 and is there to extend and customize Dynamics 365 applications. And of course, licensed by Dynamics 365 users. If you had a Dynamics 365 application with Power Apps application, your application could also be accessed by Power Apps licensed users. And you'll see that you'll see here, sorry, an overview of the rights within Dynamics 365. Any questions on Power Apps licensing at all? If you have any questions, there is a chat window that's available for you. So feel free to ask anything there. I will kind of pose after every session, after every element of the Power Platform if you want to ask any questions. We'll also have a Q&A at the end as well, so you can ask your question then too. But if there are no questions, I'll move on to Power Apps Portal. So if you have a Power Apps application that you want to take to external users, one of the options doing that is to use Power Apps Portal. And that is licensed for external users. And we're going to have two types of external users. Users who just view a website, and that's licensed per page view, and users who actually log into a portal. So users who have a username and a password, and that is licensed per login. The per page view licensing model is sold at the back of 100,000, and that's 100,000 page views per month. And for authenticated users, we're licensing that per login in packs of 100 login, where one login is one user logging in for 24 hours. So if you had a user that logged in every day for 30 days in a month, that would take 30 out of your 100 login pack. There are additional tiers, as you can see here. The more logins you need, the cheaper the license becomes. So what we tend to look at is looking at how many logins are required and then finding the best, cheapest way to do that. And then for internal users, we'd license that either via Dynamics 365 Enterprise licenses or via Power Apps licenses. Now, very recently, Microsoft also released Power Pages, which extends from the Power Apps portal. It is only currently in preview, so we don't have details of the licensing. It looks like it could be part of the Power Apps portal, but it's not clear for now. And what that does is it lets you build customer-facing websites with low to no codes, and you can either use a simple drag and drop process, Or if you want more features, you can also use Visual Studio Code to build those websites. Any more questions at all before I move on to Power Automate? Brilliant. So now on to Power Automate. Power Automate is what allows us to create business processes without the need for coding. So automating those business processes. Oops, not sure what happened there, sorry. And to license Power Automate, again, we see that same concept of standard and premium connectors. There's a link at the bottom of the screen here that you can use to search for connectors, and that will tell you whether a connector is premium or standard. If you're using a standard connector, that's going to be included as part of your 365 suites. Again, all suites apart from M365 F1. And if you're using a premium connector, then we'll need to license the Power Automate separately. A example of a standard connector could be automating email and calendar processes. So anything that's part of Office 365, and premium connectors are going to be things like, again, on-premises connectors or automating things like Azure processes. And now to license Power Automate, we have two options. Either licensing the flow itself, so that may be where you have a few flows that are accessed by the whole company. If you do license Power Automate per flow, it includes child flow. So if you have a flow pulling onto a flow, that remains a one flow license. And when you do buy that flow, those flow licenses, the first time you purchase them, you do need to buy a minimum of 5. Another option is to license on a per user basis. So we're going to, in that case, license the user to access an unlimited number of flows. Another thing to note is that you do not need to license Power Automate flows that are within Power Apps. So if we have a Power Apps application that calls onto a flow, that flow does not need to be licensed. It comes as part of a Power App licensing. So when you buy Power Apps, it includes flows within that Power App application. And with Power Automate, we can also use RPA, which stands for Robotic Process Automation. I've just realized there's a question here, so I'm just going to post before I go on to RPA. So question here is if a number of SharePoint lists have had their forms customized using Power Apps and they already have access to the SharePoint list, do they need extra licenses to use the Power Apps? Well, it looks like your Power App here is only using SharePoint lists, so only not using Dataverse. So as long as you're not actually using a premium connector, then and only using a Canvas app, then you wanted to license that because it's part of Office 365. If that was using a premium connector, then your users would need to be licensed. I hope that answers the question. So on to RPA, Robotic Process Automation. RPA allows us to automate legacy applications where there aren't any APIs or connector available by recording mouse clicks, keyboard use, and data entry, and then replacing these steps with process automation. This is done through the UI flow connector and, of course, is low to no code. Now, there are two types of robotic process automation, attended or unattended. An attended RPA is actioned by a user, so you need to be logged in for the process to start. An unattended RPA is not actioned by a user, it's actioned by something. So usually a flow will action the RPA. So you don't have a user there, it runs automatically. And so with Power Automate to work with the RPA, we're using the UI flow connectors either via an attended or an attended motion, each with their own licensing model. And that's what we'll have a look now. So the attended RPA is licensed per user, where we are licensing the user, triggering the RPA with Power Automate per user with the attended RPA. If your user is already licensed with Power Automate per user, there's a step up to get that attended RPA there. Now, if it's an unattended RPA that we have, we're licensing that per bot, and that is an add-on to Power Automate per flow or Power Automate per user with RPA. Although we're more likely to see that as an add-on to the per flow licensing model, because it's licensed per bot. Now, where we're licensing unattended RPAs for bots, those bots might need to have an Office 365 account. They might need a mailbox, access to Teams. They might need to access Excel files or a virtual desktop. And to do this, we're going to need to license this bot with a license called Microsoft 365 Unattended RPA license that allows the bots to access anything relating to the Microsoft 365 service. So if we look at a simple example here where I need to change currencies of a price list every month. So I could use Power Automate and RPA to do that. I would use Power Automate to run the flow once a month and then license that with a Power Automate per flow license. Then I'll use an unattended RPA to automatically look for that up-to-date currency rate and then convert that back in the price list. And I can do that using the RPA unattended license. My bot is obviously accessing Excel to change those prices. And I could do that by licensing the bot with the Microsoft 365 unattended license to allow us to access and edit Excel. Now, if we look at a more complicated scenario, we could use RPA to automate invoice processing. So your invoice arrives via email. That then triggers the flow to update the invoicing system and then use RPA to fill that invoicing system. But we're missing a step here. We're missing some kind of artificial intelligence to extract the information from that invoice. And to do that, we can use the AI Builder. AI Builder will add artificial intelligence to your applications within the Power Platform and Dynamics 365 without the need for coding. It's licensed on a capacity basis. You have an AI Builder calculator for which there is a link at the bottom that can be used to look at the type of service used, such as sentiment analysis here, by entering the number of characters which needs to be analyzed, or in our invoicing example, the number of invoices that are going to be processed on a monthly basis. And then that will tell you how many service credits you actually need to run that service. Both the RPA licenses include 5,000 service credits, and then Microsoft have also added some service credits to be used with the Power Apps licenses. And you can buy, of course, a SKU, which is 1 million service credits. So if I go back to my invoice processing example, as I said earlier, our Power Automate flow will be created to trigger a flow when an invoice arrives. That then, so the information from that invoice is then extracted using AI Builder, and then the invoicing system will be updated using our unattended RPA. So what licensing would we need for this? First, we have one Power Automate per flow license for the flow that's created to generate the information when the email arrives. The connector that is used is UI flow, so we need RPA licensing. The task is automated, happens every time an email is received. So we need an unattended RPA add-on to a per flow license. The bot is using email to ask for approval, which means we're going to need a Microsoft 365 unattended license. And then, of course, the information is read and extracted with AI Builder. So I can go into the AI Builder calculator, look at the service I'm using, which is invoice processing, generates what I think the number of monthly invoices I will process. on a monthly basis, and that then will tell me that I need one AI Builder add-on license. Any question before I go on to Power Virtual Agents? Brilliant. I'll carry on, and as I said, we'll have a Q&A at the end as well. So, Power Virtual Agents. Power Virtual Agent is what allows us to create customer service chatbots using a guided no-code graphical interface. So that is licensed on a per tenant basis. So you buy a one Power Virtual Agent license, and that will give you 1,000 chatbots and 2,000 chat sessions. Then if you then need additional chat sessions, you can buy additionals on a per 1,000 chat session basis. A chat session, as far as Microsoft is concerned, is a chatbot used for 60 minutes or 100 of back and forth between the user and the chatbot. We do also need a user license for users managing those chatbots, but that comes at no cost. And then as part of Teams, we also have, as part of Office 365 and Microsoft 365, we have Dataverse for Teams. We have chatbots available to be used specifically within Teams. And that will allow us to create chatbots that are used within the Teams application. So for example, that could be used to provide first level IT help desk as a chatbot via Teams. And then let's have a look at Dataverse. So Dataverse is the underlying storage of the Power Platform. When you buy Power Platform products such as Power Apps and Power Automate, you get a certain amount of storage, which you can see here on a per tenant basis. You get that as part of Power Apps, Power Automate, and Dynamics 365. You get the default storage capacity on a per tenant basis. And then for every additional user license or flow license or per user per app license you buy, you get additional storage accrued. And if you then need additional storage, you can buy that on a per gig basis. The storage will be used for things like creating additional portals, etc. Now, finally, let's go on to Power BI. There are three main types of Power BI plans. You have Power BI Pro, which is licensed per user, and that allows the users to create dashboards. Any user wanting to see the dashboards will also need to have a Power BI Pro license. We then also have Power BI Premium. That's also available on a per user basis, and that's to give us more features such as higher refresh rates and paginated reports. Any user that is accessing dashboard with a premium feature would also require a Power BI Premium per user license. So if you have Pro dashboards, you need Pro licenses. Premium dashboard, everyone needs a premium license. Now, another way to license that is going to license Power BI Premium on a per node basis. So if you license on a per node basis, you get all the higher features, but you also get a dedicated resource. You have 5 types of Power BI Premium license between P1 and P5. The larger the number, the more powerful the node. And that's going to allow anyone to access the reports and the dashboards without the need for additional user licenses. So if you are creating dashboards that are being accessed by a lot of users, it might make more sense to license Premium on a per node basis, because you only need to license users creating dashboards. Usually what we tend to find is that if you have around about 500 users accessing dashboards, then it will become cheaper to buy Premium. So if we look here, we've used Power BI Premium to license the nodes. That gives us unlimited number of users accessing the dashboard. That's our basic users there. And then we've licensed the authors using Power BI Pro. Now, finally, there's also additional Power BI options. The additional ones, namely, are embedded options. And every license that gives you different sharing options. So let's have a look at all of that. So you've got Power BI free that is available. It is at no cost, but you don't get any sharing options at all with this. To start getting sharing options, you need to look at Power BI Pro. As we said earlier, you need a license to view or create content. With Power BI Premium per node, that is aimed at internal users, and that sharing there is included with the license. And then our other options are the embedded licenses. Two types of embedded licenses. The EM SKUs. So these are SKUs that are intended to be used for internal use, and they're usually used to embed content into applications. So usually embedded into SharePoint or something similar. And then finally, our other options is embedded ASQs for Power BI embedded. These are only available via Azure. They're aimed at embedding content into external facing websites. Now let's have a look at offers. There isn't a huge amount, but there is a very good offer for Power Virtual Agent that exists today. It's available until September 30th. It's available for any users who need to buy a Power Virtual Agent. And as you can see here, it has a huge discount on the Power Virtual Agent licenses, whether that's the main license or the additional session license. And that's available to anyone, as I said, until September 30th. And finally, we do also have workshops available. So we have two types of workshop that exist. You have a velocity workshop, which is used to kind of start your journey, look at what the product can do for you in your business and how we can help that. And then a second option, which is going to be a quick start option for workshop, which is deep diving into how the product is set up. So we have a few workshops available for many different things, but from a power platform side of things, we have available workshops such as App in a Day, for example. Just bear in mind these workshop schedules just been sent by Microsoft, so these are all subject to change, but they should all be fairly similar. Any question at all? So as I said, there is a chat option available here, so feel free to add your questions to the chat. I'll leave it for a minute here. See if there's any questions. So I'll stay for a little bit longer in case there are any more questions, but just an overview of the other sessions that are coming up today. We have a session at 11 a.m. on hybrid infrastructure and licensing in the public cloud, a session at 1 p.m. on modern workplace, 2 p.m. on security, and 3 p.m. on optimizing costs. So as I said, I will remain here. In case you have any questions, feel free to add questions to the chat window. The recording will be sent to you later today or tomorrow. Thank you very much. question here. So how does external access work for these licenses? If we're talking about Power Apps specifically, that's going to be usually through Power Portal. So looking at licensing per page view or per login. If you're talking about anything else, feel free to add more to your questions in the chat.